Big, massive dumps. Dumps.
Who's got a hammer?
Please clap.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Disappointed!
Stop with the questions. Celebrate!
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
Well, you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
They say, that's amazing. How did you do that? I'm cognitively there.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Welcome to the show. It's going to be fun. All right, so we've got a great show today. By the way, is it just starting or just a longer? That's the normal intro. Yes, sometimes it takes a while, okay? The video is live, sir, or ma'am. I'm not sure. Welcome. So we're going to have some fun today. We have, of course, the trucker convoy. Wait, what? They're still around? Yes, somehow, for some reason, but not getting a warm welcome. We're going to talk about that. We've got grifters getting busted. We have what's inside a deep dive, if you will, into the banned Florida math books. Oh, the banned math, but we're gonna jump in. So we're to see what all the fuss is about in those banned math books in Florida. Interesting. And then of course, Fox News. Well, Fox News openly advocates for getting rid of public schools. Fun. All right, so that said, we're gonna have fun here. You're gonna enjoy the show, so it's gonna be great. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. Of course, helps us out. Helps us get viewership everywhere, all around the internets, all the different platforms that we stream on. Let's see if we can serve. Let's see if we can hit over 1,000 viewers today, like we did yesterday on YouTube Live. So I think it kind of related to that. I think there's a feature now on YouTube where you can raid people like on Twitch. Interesting. So that was fun. I think that's what happened yesterday. So let's see that again. That'll be fun. All right. Anyway, that said, let's dive in. Let's start with the trucker convoy. All right. The trucker convoy, which somehow still exists, has once again worn out their welcome, this time in California, going from the failed whatever they did in DC to now California. Now, the People's Convoy, which was inspired by Canadian truckers who shut down the roads to protest vaccine mandates, arrived in the Bay Area last week after weeks of demonstrations in Washington, D.C. Now, demonstrations over what? Nobody can really say. Not really sure. Don't know. I mean, there were no federal mask mandates or vaccine mandates left for them to protest against. So what did they do? They just kind of drove around while wasting tons of money on gas. Great. Nailed it. Perfect. So they left, and they left DC, and I thought they just kind of went home. I thought that was the end of it. It turns out, no, they continue. Now, before I get into their activities, I do want to address people on the left who believe that this was a real people's movement, and not a right-wing chud gathering. Now, I keep pointing out all the different ways that they were a chud gathering. However, some people still don't believe it. So now, that's the thing. You were wrong. The people who sided with and promoted these truckers were also absolutely wrong. Dead wrong, period. Because protesting against non-existent mask and vaccine mandates, while not speaking about real issues facing the American people, especially the American worker, like, for example, low wages, sky-high corporate profits, inflation, that right now all those factors are obliterating the average person's finances and purchasing power. How about the reliance on fossil fuels? That's killing the average person's finances as well. And, of course, the environment. And not addressing how the average person still does not have guaranteed health care. Now, you would think that people that were so worried about things that were going on in the pandemic, well, that they'd be worried about the average person not being able to go to a doctor and not being able to afford it. However, the truckers did not address any of these issues. All they really had was a nebulous idea of freedom mixed with conspiracy theories about COVID vaccines and a promotion of fake cures like ivermectin. By the way, ivermectin, a recent study, a new double-blind clinical study of ivermectin showed that it had absolutely no effect on COVID-19 in patients. None whatsoever. I know I shouldn't have to keep bringing this up, but seriously, it doesn't work. A clinical trial conducted by a partnership between academics and clinicians in Brazil and Canada found that ivermectin does not reduce the risk of hospitalization for patients with COVID-19. The peer-reviewed study also shows ivermectin treatment did not help with various other health measures related to the virus, such as viral clearance after a week, speed of recovery, or risk of death. So, yeah. The study results were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, but since they were not posted to a Substack or a right-wing blog, they're never going to see it. Never going to see it. But look, the reality is, and everybody knows it, it doesn't work. It never has worked. We've done the studies. Anybody who pushed it, or I should say anybody who continues to push it as a miracle cure, you've either fallen for propaganda or you were the one that was pushing the propaganda in the first place. So, back to the truckers. On Friday, about 20 drivers filled the road near the home of Buffy Wicks. Now, Buffy Wicks is a Democratic Assembly member in California. They were doing the honkening 3.0. And so they were honking, using bullhorns, and generally just being annoying. Now, why? Well, the group was reportedly protesting legislation that Wicks had wrote, which aims to shield women and other birthing people from criminal and civil liability in the event of a miscarriage, self-induced or criminal abortion, or infant death due to pregnancy-related causes. So this comes after 2 women, both in Kings County, that have been prosecuted in California for having a miscarriage. Now, the charges were dropped against one woman, but another woman, Adora Perez, remains in custody as her case is returned to the courts for a new trial. So imagine going through a miscarriage and then being charged for murder. That's what the right wing wants for women. They say that this bill, falsely claim that this bill decriminalizes killing newborn babies, infanticide. That's insane. Neither the language of the bill nor the lawmakers' intent supports any of that allegation. Nonetheless, the convoy literally decided, we're going to show up at your house on your street. That's it. Now, that not only pissed off Buffy Wicks, and of course, also made her afraid for her own safety, understandably so, but her neighbors also were not a fan of the honking. Those neighbors basically told the truckers to F off. Wicks then called the police, and all the trucks, of course, left. But the story does not end there. When the convoy got stuck in traffic outside of Oakland, an Oakland Safeway, a group of residents began throwing eggs at the stalled vehicles, shouting, "Get the fuck out of here," according to video. Interesting. Now, I'm not condoning this behavior. Of course not. I'm not condoning throwing eggs at people. No. But I'm just reporting what happened, okay? It wasn't just the kids, too. Random passersby decided that they would get in on the egg throwing, the egg extravaganza, and they hurled them at trucks scrawled with phrases such as, "Let's go, Brandon," as they drove by. So it's funny because I love how these were very clearly marked. You know which ones, I should say they knew which ones they wanted to go after. It's almost as if it was a target-rich environment. Like, oh, here we go. There's a chud. There's a chud. All right, ready the egg launchers. Again, I'm not condoning it. I'm not condoning it. Now, many of those throwing eggs at the group were children who cheered each other on and then fled when running out of eggs. There were a few confrontations, but at the end of the day, nobody was arrested or harmed. In fact, one trucker had yelled at the kids, "We're fighting for your freedom too." Freedom from what? I don't understand. How is throwing women in jail for a miscarriage freedom? How is that considered freedom in any way? I don't understand. How is letting COVID run rampant among the unvaccinated freedom? I think these people are so far up their own asses that they just don't understand. They've bought into their own bullshit. They've bought into the right-wing propaganda machine that made them actually believe that they're heroes fighting for the common man. When in reality, of course, it couldn't be further from the truth. I am the Eggman. I am the walrus. You said it. I didn't. Okay. Moving on. A little bit more of a serious story here. The co-founder of the We Build the Wall project, or Grift, pleaded guilty on Thursday to charges of pocketing donor money for their own personal use. Now, Brian Colfage, he was one of the co-founders, admitted in court to basically stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars while promising that all of the donations would go to building that wall, which of course was never going to be built, they couldn't actually build a wall on private land without, without permission, of course, from the people who own that land, not to mention federal land, which they did not have permission to build that wall on. And so, look, the whole project was doomed to fail from the start. A very, very bad idea. Now, once they realized that it was a bad idea and that they couldn't actually build the wall, what did they do? They didn't return the money. No, they went and spent it on themselves. Now, his plea came a month before a trial in that case that had begun back in August of 2020, when co-founder Steve Bannon was hilariously pulled from a luxury yacht. That's right. I'm in favor of pulling rich people, especially grifters, off their yachts. I love it. And arrested on allegations that he and 3 others had ripped off their own donors to fund this wall. Now, Steve Bannon, who, by the way, was very instrumental in planning January 6th, he was pardoned by Donald Trump. Wait, maybe those things are connected. Maybe that's the reason Donald Trump had pardoned Steve Bannon, because they were all in conversations. How do you help me steal the election? Well, obviously I got to pardon this guy, or I can't have conversations with him when he's in prison. But now Bannon, of course, was pardoned and pleaded not guilty to charges that he pocketed over $1 million and had, of course, used some of the money to secretly pay Colfage over $300,000. Colfage and co-defendant financier Andrew Bottolato did plead guilty. That case, of course, was heard by U.S. District Judge Annalisa Torres in Manhattan. She'll also be doing the trial next month. The case, now, by the way, the organizers of We Build a Wall had raised about $25 million from thousands of donors as they repeatedly pledged that every dollar would be used for the project. As to describe his crimes by the judge, Colfage said that the group had originally intended for all the raised money to be used to build a wall, but soon it became apparent that the plan to donate the money to the U.S. government for the wall's construction was not possible. And by the way, $25 million wouldn't even cover a small section of the wall. This is miles and miles of wall that would have been necessary. It would have been a lot more expensive than $25 million. At that point, Colfage said that they induced donors to opt into a new project to build a border wall on private land by falsely representing that none of the donations would be spent on salaries or compensation to the fundraisers. As a result, Colfage pleaded guilty to wire fraud, conspiracy, and tax charges. Bottolato pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy. The agreements specified the defendants will not challenge sentences within an agreed to guidelines range. For Colfage, that range was 4 to 5 years. For Bottolato, it was roughly 3.5 to 4 years. Without the plea deal, Colfage could have faced up to 46 years in prison, while Bottolato faced a maximum punishment of 20 years in prison. So, now during the hearing, Colfage admitted, "I knew what I was doing was wrong and a crime." After he spoke, Judge Torres asked questions, including whether he had promised the public that 100% of the money would go towards building the wall. He answered, "Yes, that is correct. Despite your promise, you made an agreement with others to keep a large sum of money for yourself." "That is correct," Colfage answered. Bottolato said he engaged in a conspiracy from 2018 to 2020, agreeing to assure donors that all the money would go towards building the wall when he knew the statements were false. "I knew this was wrong, and I'm terribly, terribly sorry for what I did. And I humbly beg the court for mercy." No, he's only sorry he got caught. Both of them were. When the judge asked Bottolato if he was aware that Colfage was going to get money from donations, he said, "Yes, I did, and I helped facilitate it." So, look, there it is. Another scam where right-wingers stole money from people, and by the way, stole money from people who are not good people. They wanted to fund a wall for what? To keep immigrants out. because they believed that immigrants were the worst thing that this country has ever seen. So understand who these people are. Now, do I feel sorry that they were scammed? No, not at all. And you shouldn't feel sorry for them either. But at the same time, what happened to them was a crime. And so, of course, the people who scammed them were even worse people. And so you have terrible people scamming terrible people. So that's what happens. So look, they were never going to build a wall. I mean, I think it's very obvious, right? They knew it was impossible. They could have returned that money. They could have been good people, or slightly less horrible people, I should say, and at least been honest and said, look, we can't actually build a wall. We just don't have, we don't have the ability to do so, and we don't have permission on private land. We're sorry. We got to send the money back. We got to send the money back. But they couldn't help themselves. They spent $1.6 million on themselves. Colpage, here's some of the stuff that he bought. He used some of that $350,000 he received on home renovations, boat payments, a luxury SUV, a golf cart, jewelry, cosmetic surgery, personal tax payment, and credit card debt. Now, if that's not bad enough, taking donor money and lavishing it on themselves, Steve Bannon was also bragging about it. And even all of that, after all that, he still got pardoned by Trump. And obviously, why? Again, it's probably because, and this is my speculation, Bannon was helping Trump plan on how to steal the election. But again, not only did Bannon steal your money, and this is for all you conservatives, but he laughed about it. He laughed at you. And then Donald Trump also laughed at you. And by the way, Donald Trump left the other two guys, Colpage, high and dry, as well as everybody else involved in January 6th. This is who he cares about. It's almost as if Steve, he had looked at Trump had looked at Steve Bannon and thought, well, that was a great scam. Well done. I'm going to need you to help me run my scam on the American people. They don't care about you. None of these grifters care about you. They don't give a shit. They don't care. They will lie to your face about what the real problems are in this country. Oh no, it's the immigrants. No, it's not the immigrants. You know who's making your life harder? Rich people. Rich people. It's the assholes who already have everything, that are doing everything they can to make sure you get nothing, that they take everything that they can in order to make an extra buck. If that means demonizing the most helpless people, the migrants, asylum seekers, so be it. Anything for them to make more money. That's it. Hey, look over there, it's the immigrants. Suckers, I just took your money. I just spent it on myself. Morons, idiots. Ha! All I have to do is distract you with the things that I tell you to hate, that I tell you that are ruining your life, and you'll just keep giving me your money. That's it. I just have to keep you distracted and angry. And then you'll do whatever I want, including give me money. Now look, I got a nose for sniffing out scams, okay? Right wing, it's full of them. It's a target-rich environment. That's why you see most of the scams happen on the right. Now that, of course, doesn't mean that there aren't any other scams that might happen, for example, on the left, right? I've been wanting to say this as an aside for a while now, but I'm pretty sure the People's Party at this point might be a scam. Look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but they haven't put out the candidate. They haven't run for any offices. They haven't gotten anybody on the ballot. They don't seem to have any plans to put anyone on the ballot. Again, I'm not seeing anything going on there except for taking donations. So, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty good at sussing out scams. Sadly, the world seems to be full of scams, and it generally happens to, be people who are convinced that somebody else is going to come along and solve your problems if you just give them your money. Well, that's not going to happen. If somebody says that, hey, I'm going to solve your problems, just give me your money. Well, don't believe them. You might want to look into the records, right? And don't let their appeals to your emotions, for example, anger, fear, hatred, hopelessness is another one, okay? And I know there's a lot of people that are, especially on the left, that are feeling super hopeless right now. I get it. I understand. Just look into the facts. Don't let any of that stuff, and even empathy, by the way, because I know empathy is another thing that they can play on. Just make sure to think straight. Don't let any of those appeals to your emotion cloud your judgment. And you too can avoid scams. I don't feel sorry for none of them, low-life crooks, the ones that get scammed. No better for your dumb ass. I'll take your money if you want to give it away. Says Deborah Smith Bonner on Facebook. There's taxes and there's toll booths everywhere. One or the other, please. Let's see. No one is coming to save you. No, what you got to do is you got to organize yourselves. And that's something that I've always, that I'm a proponent of. Yes, let's organize. That's why the labor movement is so wonderful. One of the stories that I wanted to do today, but I'm not going to get to, is Christian Smalls and the recent, there was a rally in Staten Island celebrating the Amazon labor union win. And I think that's the way to go. Again, Christian Smalls once again proves that he's an excellent face for the union push, somebody who's not getting involved in personal drama, and basically doing everything he can to try to get more people involved in this win and to continue winning. Again, organization, unionization, getting people together for co-ops, community guards, all that wonderful stuff. That's how you win. You start on the local level and you branch out. Okay, so let's get to Florida's banned books. Florida has been on the warpath against education, recently rejecting hundreds of math books for what they claim to be critical race theory and liberal indoctrination. They even posted some examples of what they consider to be objectionable from the books. And so, look, I had been asking for examples of what they would, consider to be critical race theory or indoctrination. Here's what they said. Here's their examples. So I kind of put these together about some of the stuff that they had rejected in these books. Social and emotional learning. So there is the sample materials here. Yeah, okay. I really do not see an issue here. I think the biggest, the thing that pops out is the adding and subtracting polynomials where it says, what, me, racist? More than 2 million people have tested their racial prejudice using an online version of the implicit association test. And the chart, of course, is how they arrive at the conclusion, or shows you basically the formulas of figuring out how to test that racial bias. So those those are the examples that Florida had given. The New York Times also obtained some of these books, and they have their own examples of what they thought that Florida might be objecting to. And so here's from that report. Using online sample materials provided by publishers to Florida school districts, the New York Times was able to review about 21 of the rejected books and see what may have led the state to reject them. Now, because Florida has released few details about its textbook review process, it is unknown whether these examples actually led to the rejections or not. But there's a little bit of assumption at play. Now, in most of the books that they had reviewed, there was little that touched on race and absolutely no examples of critical race theory. Now, that's what we've been saying all along. They're not teaching critical race theory in K through 12. That is a college level course. Now, the implicit bias test in math, again, that wasn't actually testing the students' racial biases. It was giving an application of the math models that were used to determine racial bias. They're not actually telling kids that you're racist. Okay? So, look, only somebody who wants to interpret it that way can see it that way. Now, the data, however, not shockingly, is going to show that Republicans, because they do a breakdown by political affiliation, tend to have more racial bias based on their own answers to those implicit bias questions. So no wonder Florida looks at that and says, no, we're going to hide that. We don't want people to realize that Republicans are more racist according to our own answers. Oops. Revealing a little bit too much, right? Now, the Times also explains that many of the textbooks included something called social and emotional learning. I had talked about this before. And so now that is a practice, if you missed that, that has roots in psychological research that tries to help students develop a mindset that will help them with success. Well, we want academic success, but not just academic, but also social success in the workplace. And of course, teaching empathy. Now, here's an example of that from the Times. Okay, so that's an example. Here we are. This is from marketing materials provided by the company, Big Ideas Learning. Big Ideas. Now, those elementary books were rejected in Florida. This diagram names core skills students should develop and gives an example of how to conquer fear and build self-confidence. Okay. That circular diagram names 5 core skills students should develop: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, relationship building. That framework was developed by an education nonprofit called CASEL. Okay, so there it is. There it is. In the example of self-awareness is Newton is afraid of heights. He doesn't want to cross a hanging bridge in the Belize jungle. His friends give him the self-confidence he needs to successfully walk over the bridge. Oh no. Emotional support and self-confidence. How dare we teach children that? My God. You know what a real conservative would do? Real conservative would push Newton off that bridge for being a beta male. Ah, you're scared. You're scared of a little bridge?
Beta male. Beta.
Oh yeah, you know what? We're just gonna push you over. We don't need you. You're dead weight. And then you know what a real conservative would do? Cut the bridge out from behind him. You don't get to cross that bridge. No, you want to get here? You want to get here where I'm at? Bootstraps. Bootstraps. Now, you think I'm being hyperbolic? Maybe a little. But honestly, not really. Because let me give you an example here. So you have Christopher Rufo. I'm pretty sure you've heard of him before. He's a so-called right-wing thought leader. And he thinks that this kind of education is making children too soft. Oh, In a March interview conducted over email, he stated that while social and emotional learning sounds positive and uncontroversial in theory, in practice, SEL serves as a delivery mechanism for radical pedagogies such as critical race theory and gender deconstructionism. The intention of SEL is to soften children at an emotional level, reinterpret their normative behavior as an expression of repression, whiteness, and internalized racism, and then rewire their behavior according to the dictates of left-wing ideology. This guy sounds like he is so far up his ass he can see what he ate for lunch. You can't get more pretentious than that asshole. I mean, how's that for internalized, by the way, being up your own ass? Now, Rufo also raised concerns that social and emotional learning requires teachers to serve as psychologists, which they are not equipped to do. That's funny because the right wing has no problem forcing teachers to do things that they're not equipped to do, while also making sure that they're not equipped to do the job that they're supposed to do, which is teaching. I mean, honestly, wasn't Florida one of the states that were pushing to have teachers serve as armed guards in their classrooms to be able to know which student they have to shoot in a mass shooter situation? Instead of doing anything to curb gun violence and reduce the incidences of mass shootings in this country? No. They just wanted to give teachers guns and incentivize them to have more guns and instruct them how to kill their own students. The teachers totally are equipped for that, according to the right wing, but not equipped to be psychologists? Come on. What is this? And at the same time, they also demonize teachers' unions and consistently cut funding to schools. But no, it's the social and emotional learning. That's the real problem. Oh yes, we're teaching kids how to be decent people. Can't have that. Can't have that. And by the way, DeSantis also believes that education that factors into the fact that children have emotions is actually bad. Oh, they should just be focused on math, fractions, decimals. Don't let those pesky emotions get in your way. You got to do the task. You got to do the math. It's almost as if they treat children as if they're just robots. And that's what it is, too. Blank slate robots that you can order around. Because honestly, that's how they see other people, other human beings, adults. No. You listen and you follow orders. You get your ass in the mines. You get your ass in the factory. I don't care about how you feel. No, go and make me money. That's what it's all about. They don't consider them to be humans. And by the way, they also, I think there's a lot of right-wingers out there that consider to be children to essentially be a person that is supposed to be a copy of themselves, right? No, you have to be exactly like me. You're my little mini person, a little mini me, right? And so I'm going to teach you all of my values, and you better think the same way that I do. And if you don't, it must be liberal indoctrination. Must be. Now, again, you might think that that's too clear. Or I'm sorry, that's too far. But let me make it clear to you why they are wrong. Young people are complex human beings with complex emotions. I know. I used to be one of them. We all used to be. Did you forget what it was like to be a kid? To be young? Do you remember having emotions? Look, they do have complex social, emotional, and logical issues. They've got to learn to exist in a teamwork setting or by themselves, to prioritize work versus play. We all have to learn that at some point. That's something that becomes very important into adulthood. Now, also, you have to learn how to deal with people and function in society. Kids are not automatons. And a lot of people consider them to unfortunately not have any agency. And I think that is a bit misguided. They do have agency. Yes, of course, you have to look at it age appropriately. And of course, most importantly, you have to do guidance as an adult. But you also have to understand that they have feelings. And that those feelings are legitimate. And that you have to understand that sometimes they don't have the emotional control to be able to not act out on those feelings. So, you have to guide them to be able to express themselves in a healthy way and to deal with situations. And that's not just a parent's job, because what the schools are doing is preparing people for life, for work, for society. You got to get along with your coworkers. You got to have certain level of social skills. And, again, depending on the age, you've got to learn that emotional control. So to recap, simply put, kids are people too, and they need guidance. That includes dealing with emotion and social situations. That's what this education is about. And incorporating that into work situations. Now, of course, many of these rejected textbooks prompt students to consider emotions. And of course, the right wing did not like that. For example, in the McGraw-Hill 5th grade book, students are encouraged at the beginning of the school year to write a math biography, reflecting on their feelings about the subject and how they expect math could help them enjoy hobbies or achieve their goals. Now, according to Stephanie Jones, a developmental psychologist and expert on social emotional learning at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, she says that a math biography is a way of helping kids. There's a fair amount of evidence that indicates that if you surface your uncertainty and anxiety about something, it's easier to grapple and manage it. Teachers could then read the biographies to learn what students might need extra support, people who are more anxious at math. Look, I hate math. That's how I feel about it. It's always how I felt about it. I think it's very tedious, doing math problems that I'd never need in the real world. But also, I've learned later on that I do have adult ADHD, and I had it when I was a kid too. So I get extremely bored very easily. Perhaps if someone had known that, if we had social emotional learning back when I was a child, maybe I wouldn't have such a burning hatred of math and wouldn't have had such a struggle dealing with it. And so that probably would have helped me back in the day, and probably would have helped countless people. But no, social emotional learning, bad, apparently. There's more. The textbooks that Florida rejected are also filled with references to character traits like perseverance and cooperation. Oh no. A first grade textbook from the publisher Sabas Learning Company, formerly known as Pearson K-12, repeatedly refers to the importance of effortful learning, learning together, and having a growth mindset. Throughout the book, cartoon characters, children pop up on the sides of pages to remind students of these ideas. In fact, here is an example of that. Okay. Gee, does that look like critical race theory? I don't know. That cartoon child, she's black, must be critical race theory. Wow. As far as you got to have a growth mindset. Try a new way when you're stuck. That's actually pretty good advice. But oh no, growth mindset. We do not want growth. That sounds progressive. You have too much growth, you're going to grow into a communist. It seems like that's what they think, that they actually believe in this stuff. Now, a rejected geometry textbook from the publisher Study Edge prompted students to rate from 1 to 4 how willing they are to try new things in math or persevere when something is challenging. Great. That's smart. Yes, try a new way. persevere, keep working at it. Now, what this is basically, to me, seems like critical thinking, teaching kids how to think critically when presented with a problem, to come up with actual solutions. Hey, oh, this way does not work. Well, let's try something else, and not give up until we find the answer. I just figured out why conservatives hate it. Now remember, conservatives are, well, conservative, right? Their entire ideology is to conserve, to keep doing the same thing over and over, even if it doesn't work, and especially if it doesn't work for certain people. And of course, to never try new things, because new things are communism and bad and makes baby Jesus cry. The thing that they're trying to do is conserve the old ways, the old social hierarchies, the old gender roles, religion. All of that depends on not doing anything about stuff that doesn't work. Because to them, it does work for them. I mean, in their example, and we've seen evidence to this, from the fact that they don't think that this is a problem, a woman working a job, the same job as a man, ends up usually getting paid less for the same work. Now, conservatives look at this and they say, well, let's not solve that problem because she deserves less money. Why? Because she's a woman, obviously. And she's the weaker sex. That's according to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said those words. I didn't. What about a problem with race in this country? Oh, no, there's no problem. Racism is over, friend. I mean, especially since I'm not and never have been treated poorly for the color of my skin. And so, we shouldn't do anything because there's no problem. I don't see a problem. Why should I have to critically think about anything when I'm doing just fine? I don't really care about you. Let's just do the same policies. Give money to the rich. So you understand that this is why conservatives hate education in general, because it provides either solutions or encourages people to think about different solutions. Over the past year, Republican Party activists have increasingly focused on what they call the excesses of progressive education. And it was at that time, social emotional learning came under fire. In June 2021, for example, the Florida Department of Education sent a memo to publishers of math textbooks advising them not to include social emotional learning and culturally responsive teaching in their materials. Timothy Doerr, Director of Teacher Leadership at Northwestern, called that short-sighted and said research showed that incorporating social and emotional learning into text helps students learn social skills. If you ask 100 CEOs what skills they want in a new hire, the top 5 skills are going to be about social and emotional learning, not algebra, he said. Are you a nice person to talk to? Are you going to be a good coworker? Get along with the team. We know that the best way to teach that is to combine it with math, social studies, whatever. Now, look, that makes sense. That makes sense. Do you want to work with assholes? No, nobody wants to work with an asshole. Yes, people want to work with people that are good to work with. Especially since in the current, modern context of work, we spend, as people, a majority of our week, of our time at work. Do you think that, do you really want to spend 8 hours a freaking day with a bunch of dicks? No, I don't. No, I want to spend it with good people, doing something positive, doing good things. But apparently they don't agree. Now, getting back to critical race theory, right? Apparently there are few references to race throughout these math textbooks, not shockingly. though the publishers did take care to include word problems with ethnically diverse names and foods. For example, empanadas. Oh no, it's the empanadas. The empanadas are coming over the border. We've got to ban them from the country. Now, a rejected McGraw-Hill pre-algebra textbook did include some mini biographies of mathematicians throughout history, which makes sense, right? So, look, is it important for learning pre-algebra? Not necessarily, as far as like learning actually how to do it, the steps. But I think it is interesting to give people context. And so now, the biographies of the people, and look, that even might make me read it because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Well, it turns out this is why they rejected it. Almost all of the people biographied in this textbook were women or people of color. Of course. Now, one of them is a page from, a short biography of Dorothy Johnson Vaughan, an African-American mathematician who led a computing unit for the agency now known as NASA. So, of course, people of color and women have had huge impacts. We couldn't have gotten to the moon without women programming for NASA. So that's really important, okay? Now, of course, these people, like Ron DeSantis, they want to erase women, black women in particular, from history, from these important achievements, and not celebrate their impacts on our history, on our society. Let's just ignore their contributions. Why? In order to make, well, not the students, but white males feel good about themselves. And that's all it is. Their entire idea in Florida and a lot of these states is to try and basically give out participation trophies for all the incredibly average white men. That's really it. And so they can't have it. They can't have white men not feel special. Look, normal people, by the way, normal people do not have issues in highlighting people of color and their accomplishments in addition to society. Normal people. And most of the people in this country are normal people. But there's a subset of people that hate it, and that's racist. Why? Because it destroys racial assumptions. And, by the way, misogynistic assumptions. So it hurts their feelings, and they can't have it. They are the snowflakes. Racists and misogynists are the biggest snowflakes ever. They get triggered by the mere existence of somebody who is different. And, by the way, somebody who has achieved something. They demand special treatment and believe that they should get a participation trophy. And let me give you an example, right? I always love it when they cry about lack of a White History Month. Oh, black people, they get an entire month for their history. Why isn't there a White History Month? I want to be special. I want my award. What did you do? I was born white. Why do you need an award for that? What, like, you are asking for a participation trophy. I mean, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Beta male. How weak are you? How weak are you to point at something? And by the way, there's a reason that black people have a Black History Month. It's because of this very thing. That textbooks, for example, in Florida, love to gloss over and ignore black contributions to our society. That's why there has to be a Black History Month, to celebrate those achievements that racists love to cover up and ignore. So come on. No, look, these people, their real problem is that they're so incredibly inadequate. They have done nothing, they've added nothing, but they expect to be praised anyway because they think they're better than someone else based solely on their color of their skin. And you know, black people, women, minorities, they have to work so much harder to get even to an even footing with a person who's white. Now, I know if you're a white person and you're sitting in poverty, you're like, what the hell, man? What are you talking about privilege? I'm not privileged. I'm poor. Well, here's the thing about that, right? I grew up poor. You're not poor because of the color of your skin. That's like the difference. That's the difference. Yes, you are struggling. And it is an unfair system to a lot of different people. There is. The system loves to crush poor people. I understand that completely. But you're not in a worse position because of the color of your skin. That's the difference. White people, yeah, poor. Black people, poor, but then treated worse, just as a result of being black. That's the difference. That's the privilege. And it may not seem like much to you, but to a black person, it's a lot. But again, I'm talking about racist, I'm talking about inadequate people. Okay? And so that brings me to DeSantis. DeSantis is an average person. He is not special. There's nothing special about him. There's nothing special about any of these people who just want to use racism to cover up for their own inadequacies. Okay. That went a little long. Moving on. A Fox News host has openly called for getting rid of public schools. Now, on Monday's edition of Outnumbered, during a discussion about a case that involves a high school football coach who was fired for leading prayers on the field, Lisa Kennedy said this.
This will be a very important case for religious liberty, but also maybe a great time in our country's history where we rethink whether or not we have public schools. Maybe we should not have the government involved in education at all, so parents and teachers and administrators can make those decisions themselves instead of having the government impose it on them, because it is the public school aspect of this that is creating the legal challenge.
Okay, so a couple of things here. For one, the legal challenge is this. So this guy, this coach, basically, while he's on the field at a school function, is leading his students in prayers. Well, that would be against the First Amendment, the establishment of a religion. So you can't actually do that. And so, of course, that pressures the students into also being involved in the prayer, even if they might not want to. And so there's that social pressure. Generally, just don't do it. And look, you can be a religious person, you can pray wherever you want. If a student decided he was going to do his own prayer, or if he was going to do his own prayer by himself, totally fine. But when you start leading prayers and expecting, and you know, this is the whole problem here. It's an implicit expectation that students will have to be involved in the prayer. And so that's a problem, okay? That is the establishment of a religion. So now that's what this case is about. That said, her problem is not that, oh, you know, that guy probably should have kept the religion to himself. Her problem with the case is, I guess we shouldn't have public schools at all. Oh, okay, so just get rid of public schools. Just eliminate them. Get rid of them. Who cares if your kids can't get an education? No. At least mine will. I'm set. What, you think Kennedy's got kids in public school? No, Kennedy's can afford private school. Oh, everybody on that panel can afford private school. So, look, it's a classic conservative mindset. Fuck you, I got mine. And even better, that the kids do not become educated. Because guess what? Republicans do really well with the poorly educated. Look, what they want is for poor people to shut their mouths and to know their place. Do my labor, make me money. Work for my company. You go back to the mines and you make me some goddamn money. If you're educated, and this is why they didn't educate the slaves, well, if they're educated, then they might actually rise up out of their station and demand rights and demand pay. No. So, look, that's how it used to be before public education. Only the elite, only the people with the money and the power had an education. The rest of the people, well, they had to work the fields. They had to be the serfs. Most importantly, they had to listen to the authority at the time. What was the authority at the time? Well, the king, you could say. True. But in reality, who had the most power? The church. Religion. You know what we called that time when religion ruled society? It was the Dark Ages. Yes, the Dark Ages. And so, look, and by the way, during the Dark Ages, the Scottish hit on a great idea. Hey, you know what? Why don't we educate the poor? And by the way, it was the church that did it. But they decided, no, what we're going to do is we want an educated populace. So we're going to give all the people, and this was passed through Scottish Parliament back in the 1600s, by the way. This plan to make all education, everybody, to get an education. And you know what happened? Turns out, poor people actually helped bring Scotland into the Enlightenment before anyone else. It also proved that anybody, given a good education, can actually rise up and become a thought leader and maybe change the world and society for the better. Now, conservatives, you would think that you would agree with that, right? I mean, even one of their so-called heroes, Adam Smith, he came from public education. And even Adam Smith believed that education should be accessible to all, because he said in his words that it would offset the harmful effects of the division of labor on the workers. Therefore, all the workers should have access to an education. Education is necessary for all to create a prosperous society. That's Adam Smith. Conservative hero. Hand of the free market. And yet Kennedy is like, but what about my kids? I want them to be special and not have to compete with other children. Why? Is there something wrong with your kids? Do you think that they're not smart enough? No, I'm honestly asking. I'm not saying that her kids aren't smart. I don't know. But you seem to think that they're not. You seem to think that having a public education gives them an unfair advantage over your kids. I don't know. I thought competition made people better. I thought you loved competition. I don't get it. Now, something her co-host, by the way, couldn't get is what we were supposed to do with people who cannot afford private school. Now, here was her so-called answer.
And what do we do with the people who can't afford private? Like, what does that look like? Because each state allots some money, so they would get that money, I would assume. Isn't that what Florida wanted to do?
Vouchers. That's what Florida
did.
That's
what Florida wanted to do.
Yeah, we could entirely rethink. Okay, I'll tell you why I say that. It's because the two most powerful teachers unions in the country are opposed to Coach Kennedy. They are using their heft and their influence to make sure that he loses this case.
Do you see that? Do you notice that? Before she goes back into the distraction, vouchers. Oh, we're just going to give everybody a voucher. Oh, kind of like with food stamps, right? Except that no, those are means tested and not everybody gets them. And of course, what money does get doled out in vouchers, and this is why one of the reasons conservatives love it, is because it goes to private corporations. Oh, okay, yeah, private corporations, which by the way, can teach whatever they want. There's no standards for them, so not everybody's going to have an equal education. And by the way, after trashing the teachers' unions, because of course, they have a war on teachers, what happens when the state government decides, which is already stingy with the education funding? I remember Kansas literally having to be ordered by their own court because what they did is cut education funding so much to public schools that they are in violation of their own constitution. They had to be ordered to fund education. What's going to happen when all that money is now in vouchers? And conservative states say, you know what? The rich need another tax cut. Where are we going to take the money from? Oh, I know. Let's cut the voucher program. Yeah, you know, some poor kids, I mean, they just don't deserve to go to school. We should cut it for certain kids. Any idea what certain children they would cut from vouchers? And look, if they do that, of course, your kid's SOL. And so are you, by the way, if you cannot afford childcare when you work. Remember, in most families, it now takes a 2-parent household working to bring in money. And so, well, now your kid, you can't afford to send them to school. You don't make enough. And there's, no childcare and no place to send your kid. What are you going to do? You're going to quit your job. Then you got to stay home. And that effectively cuts your income even more. And so what that does is that it sends even more people into poverty, and it guarantees that you and your children will never escape poverty. You know why? Because education has always been the great equalizer in society. That child is not going to have any road to success in life without any sort of education. But conservatives look at that and they think, oh, good. Oh, that's a win. Of course. It's a win for us. That's how they feel. And by the way, I spoke to a conservative. Okay. So I remember speaking to a conservative woman, and she actually admitted that she didn't want to pay property taxes because she didn't care about other people's kids having an education. I don't care about them, she says. They're not my problem. Why should I have to pay for that in my taxes? Why? Well, lady, they are your problem. They're part of your community. They're the future of that community. They're going to be living there. You want these kids to be living there without an education, without access to an education, without going to school? What do you think they're going to do with all that free time and no education and no prospects and eventually no job? What do you think is going to happen to them? They're going to do crime, very likely to survive. And they'll either end up in prison or something else. So that's one of the many different terrible effects of eliminating public education. So maybe for once, these people need to start thinking about more than just themselves. You're not an island. You're not a special snowflake or better than anyone else. You're part of society. Fucking act like it. All right. Okay. Yeah, I noticed I had to, during that segment, ban the sex bot in chat. Let's see. LOL, sex bots, you know you made it when you have enough viewers to attract the sex bots. Yay, I guess. Our mod must be out today, unfortunately. Bummer. But anyway. Yes, they're really trying to promote that.
Wet ass P word.
Yeah. Fun. The sex bot wants to do Waldorf Nation. The entire nation? I mean, that's at least a few hundred people. That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm just saying, you better come prepared. You're gonna need a bucket and a mop.
There's some whores in this house.
Oh no.
Sexual anarchy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Anyway, enough about that.
Testicles.
Tallywhacker.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, I'm done with it. I'm done with that. I'm done with that. Ben Shapiro's just mad his wife has never needed a bucket and a mop. Okay. That's enough internet for me today. Did I hear Ben Shapiro say F around and find out? Yes, I did. It's funny. Hilarious. All right, so before we go, super chats. Let's do it. Okay. A lot of kindness here today. So let's get into it. Dango Bangle says, when are you going to do a show with Encano? I don't know. He's never invited me. I mean, they want to invite me. Totally fine. Just have them reach out, I guess. Fun. I thought it was confirmed that Bannon co-planned January 6th. Yeah, he was definitely one of those, one of the co-conspirators. Somebody once said almost all forms of civilization are built upon the backbones of scamming people. The U.S. is king of scam civilizations. Dango Bango, thank you very much. Right-wing ideology, a.k.a. assault, death, spiral cult. I've never heard it called that before. Right, schools don't prepare for jack. It's daycare. It is now, but I've also called work adult daycare before too. So, schools outside of the Americas might prepare you, but they're here in the U.S. Nope, they don't even train you to be factory workers. It's messy daycare. Look, I wrote a whole college paper on how basically schools today, K through 12, is essentially teaching people to be in a part of an economy that no longer exists. And that is the do whatever your boss tells you, shut up, be quiet, do all that, and just listen to authority. And so that was a problem. And there is an issue with that when it comes to education, but I don't think it's social and emotional learning. I definitely think that they need to teach more, critical thinking in schools, and yes, even some critical race theory. Oh yes. And then I'll be your backup mod. Well, if you are asking for the wrench, I could oblige. You are here all the time. And more sociology. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Spin Me a Sailcloth says it was seamstresses at Playtex who were making bras that ended up making the spacesuits for NASA. Ada Lovelace was the mother of computer science. These are the things that get, that get ignored in history. These are the things that we need to point out, to focus on. Be like, hey, look, this is women, African American women, women of color, that are integral to our success as a country. Yes. For some reason, people want to hide it. And it's because they're afraid of their own inadequacies. They haven't done anything. Gabby Mathis says, happy early birthday to Jonathan Leiter and good luck on his thumb surgery. Ah, yes, happy early birthday. And hopefully your thumb, heals up quick. I don't know what's wrong with it, but I know that it can't be good. Okay. Let's see. Yes, they want workers to uncritically do what their bosses want them to do without even questioning it. Exactly. And that just does not work in this economy where you actually have to think. All right. Let's go to Twitch here. I want to thank RC Tycoon 13. I missed it yesterday, but thank you for resubbing with Prime for 4 months. I really appreciate that. Twitch viewers, I haven't forgotten about you. You know I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for the new follows, by the way. You're all fantastic. All right. That said, also thank you to those of you watching on Facebook as well. All right. Let's see. What we're going to do here on Twitch is we're going to raid in to, we'll raid into Deep Dive, Jordan Yule, over at TYT. I'm sure he'll be glad to see you. I'm sure he's going into some very heavy stuff because it's a deep dive, obviously. All right. For everybody else, thank you all. Really, really appreciate you. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. Love you all. And we'll see you tomorrow. Right here, same time, 4 p.m. Eastern.
I will eat your ass.
How you like that, boy?
Disappointed!
Venezuela.
Eurovision. They say, pronounce it Eurovision. A real beautiful company.
Clean coal, meaning to take it out cold, they're going to clean it.
Obama. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.